Startups Inside Out. You've got D's here today. And on your LinkedIn, you've got Technologist. What does that mean?
I like asking other people what that means often. The honest shit is it used to have lots of other descriptions through the years. And I think one before that was something like advisor, board member, investor. It's one of these long-winded things that kept on going. And that just meant more LinkedIn in-mails because everyone who thought they had something of interest that met those titles should reach out to me. And eventually I was like, I should really change this. And Technologist it became. I think when you look at, well, I see myself as a technologist, mostly because I've had 2 decades of experiences in this world. And when I look at the world today, when you peel away most layers, technology is underpinning it. I've lived in, I guess, the end of, let's call it Web 1, the formative years of Web 2. So I probably put my fingers in a lot of what you would regard as Web 2 infrastructure that we probably use today. And I've seen the emergence of, let's call it Web 3.
And where does most of your time go today?
On a plane, often. I'm traveling a fair bit, but my sort of time is aspirationally, I think, and you've heard me say this before, like, I aspire to make work fun and fun work. So sometimes it's not obvious if what I'm doing is fun or work. And if that's the case, I feel like I'm winning. But loosely, I wear 3 hats, small number of advisory roles, a few board positions, and some early stage investments.
And that's originally we get to know each other, right, for the investment side. And obviously you run a big angel community and like different people you're working with there. What made you get into investing on that side in the first place? What were you looking for?
That sort of just happened pretty naturally, I think. It's quite funny that we're sitting here in Clerkenwell today because I actually sent some pictures to Reshma and Carlos from Seed Camp because this used to be one of the original Seed Camp offices in this building. Yeah. And weirdly, that office became the unofficial Mozilla and Firefox office. And so I had a desk in Seed Camp offices with Carlos and Reshma and Philip Mooring and Kirsten.
Whenabouts was this?
This was around 2010, 11. So very early. Seed Camp used to do things called Seed Camp Week. And so even though I was working in the tech industry, I was always sort of alongside things happening in the London tech ecosystem, the so-called Silicon Roundabout. And having a desk at Seed Camp, I was seeing everything within Seed Camp. They asked me to help mentor Seed Camp Week, what I call 0, the very first Seed Camp Week. And I continued doing that through the years. And so even though I was never in investing, I was always periphery to it. And then in technology, through the years, co-workers, former colleagues, people that I did partnerships with, over time were slowly, both in Europe, but also in America and other parts of the world, were slowly getting into this investment world in different guises. An investor, I'm a startup founder, and so naturally I was surrounded by people that were sort of slowly edging their way into it. And myself, I was at some point saying, hey, I like helping these folks. What does that mean? It could mean like continuing to mentor and advise, and that sort of helped my advisory kind of strand of work. But another part of it was like I was constantly meeting early founders, and at some point it was like, put some skin in the game kind of thing. And the early years were not so easy because I think if you rewind the clock maybe 15 years ago, like you needed reasonably large sums of money to be doing early stage investment. Even in London, you needed maybe 15, 20, 25K. But that dynamic has changed over the last few years tremendously, whereas you could put 5K, 3K, 2K into a startup founder, and they're not necessarily taking your money for the money. They're taking your money for the strategic help, experiences, and the network you bring. And yes, I do have some money, but I don't have 25K a pop. But I could help 5 founders at 5K a pop.
And it's like, obviously, you've invested in quite a lot of companies over the years, right? Do you know how many off the top of your head?
Lots of people do. I don't. There is a spreadsheet that I could look up and tell you.
And like, how is your way of thinking? So you said you're doing smaller tickets now than you were before. But has anything else changed about what you look for, your philosophy there?
Actually, well, the very first sort of few, which is while I was still in industry, I'd say today, looking back on it, was more with my heart than with my head. There were people I knew in the ecosystem. There were friends that were doing something cool. They were racing around. I was like, yeah, I could help you maybe. And I did. Then there was a period of doing nothing because life, family, travel, work, etc. And then probably over the last few years, sort of pre-pandemic, started thinking about this again. And one of the things I thought about was, in general, I'm a brown dude in technology and have been one. I advise a lot of folks. I sit on boards, but I said on the investment fronts, I was well aware of the stats that people of color or underestimated minority founders very rarely get the majority of the funding. And I was like, can I make a small difference in that? And so I specifically said that I'd like to support underestimated minority founders, which I repeat like a broken record is a very broad statement. It does mean lots of things to lots of people. So far for me, over the last few years, it's meant women, people of color, and things on the African continent. By extension, immigrants, founders with varying sexual preferences, older founders, disabilities sort of come into the mix. And then I flippantly say, like, I don't necessarily support, or I don't support 2 white dudes in North America. And not because they're not lovely, amazing people solving interesting challenge spaces. I just don't believe my 5K makes a huge difference to them when they're literally picking up 500K in the blue bottle line.
Yeah. You mentioned the African continent there, and one of the interesting things, like, we've obviously known you for a few years now, and you didn't want to come on because you're like, well, but I'm African. And you've got such an affinity towards the African continent, obviously, where you grew up as well, right? Can you talk about the opportunity there for some people who maybe they didn't even consider it, or they haven't been looking at the African continent as a place that's worth investing in? What are you seeing there that maybe could open people's eyes up to?
Yeah, well, I am African. My entire family's on the continent in South Africa. So I grew up there. I went to school there. I got to the UK in '99. That's I used to say half my life, but like it's now more than half my life. But I'm on the continent a few times a year. I spend most of my time in East Africa and West Africa. When I'm in South Africa, it's more about hanging out with the family and having a biryani and a samosa. It's limited time in the north of the continent, although that is slowly starting to change. I've been doing recently a bit more work in Tunisia and Morocco. So that's good. That's changing. There's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of challenges on the continent. The ecosystem from a technology perspective is growing, where as Africans, historically, we were probably just consumers of technology. And then we were slowly starting to see some inspiration coming from other parts of the world, started building, and often building for local-ish problems that you were surrounded by. And that's still super important because some of those markets, Nigeria, South Africa, are rather large markets, Egypt. But now you're also finding founders on the continent that are building and solving global problems, yet they're sitting in a Kigali or Dakar. And I think that's super interesting. But it's all just the day-to-day is very different there, right? The problems are similar, but not the same. And so having empathy for what's happening on the continent is important. And for someone like me, I try and build that empathy by spending a lot of time on the continent. First thing in the year, I'll be in Lagos for a week. So just spending time on the ground and understanding what these entrepreneurs and founders are going through is super important.
You mentioned how you're on a plane a lot, right? And you're doing all that travel. What is it that you're enjoying the most of all of these different things you're doing? So you said you're going around the continent, you're doing the advisory stuff. Like, what is it that you're like, yes, I get to do this week?
being on a plane a lot is probably not good for the planet. I appreciate that, but it's super important for what I do, in the sense of I'm all about people, and being on the ground, absorbing cultures, food, hanging out with people in their own environments is necessary. Also, as an Achilles heel, I enjoy it, so that helps. And through the years, I built up this network where, I've had the opportunities through my work and other scenarios where I've got a pretty global network. There's almost everywhere in the city, everywhere in the world where I end up going to, there's someone or a group of people that I want to catch up with. And they're often all doing pretty interesting things, not always in technology, which is also quite nice, because then I'm not just surrounding my everyday with technologists.
Yeah. And even on that side as well, so you said, okay, you got the different places you're going to, like, look at different companies and build up that expertise there too. Where is it? So within the UK, right? How much your investments do you think are UK based versus global?
I'd say I've had the benefit of working, abroad in many continents. But I've lived here for a long time, and I've been part of this ecosystem for a long time. So I'd say easily 50%, 40 to 50% of my sort of helping founders happen locally. And then because of that network, I see deal flow from Silicon Valley to Germany to Nigeria. And that's only because I know people. It's not because, I'm the world's best early stage investor that, people are looking at signals from me. It's just because I know people.
So BHQ has been going for 3 years now, right? Which in many ways, we're just a baby compared to like your experience in the ecosystem. What are you seeing in the ecosystem today versus how it's been over time? Do you feel like we're at a good spot? Are the right things happening? Or is there still a lot of work to be done in the UK?
Well, there's always work to be done. The work doesn't end. The world's changing a lot. There's a lot happening in the world that, need smart people working on what I would like to think of as hard problems. And we don't have any shortage of those sorts of people. It's just a different mindset in different parts of the world. Everyone wants to maybe mimic Silicon Valley, and maybe British founders or European founders think about things and need to think about things slightly differently. There's a subset of folks that are chasing the shiny new, and that could be AI or LLMs or foundational models or stable coins, borderless transactions. UK has always been strong with fintech. But I'm hoping that, there's a sort of, I see some trend of folks that are tackling now problems in healthcare and conflict and defense, education, climate change. And I think that's where things got getting exciting. Like, smart people working on hard problems.
Like you said, you meet so many smart people, right? And obviously getting so many smart founders in, like, pitching to you as well. How are you able now to differentiate? Because I guess one of the things when I first started investing myself is that you're easy to impress, right? Because you don't know as many people building cool companies. Now for someone like you who's seen so many things, how can someone break through that higher barrier you must have now, or your higher bar in some ways of like what smart founders are or what a good founder is, because you just had seen so many in the past?
It's gone through waves. Is it perfect? No. I have to note that I'm not a VC, right? I'm not someone who's got a large fund behind me, and I'd like to think that the VC math is very different than D's math. And I've gone through waves. Early on, it was a lot about shiny things. As a technologist, I'm always looking at shiny things. Then it was a little bit about like, is this cool? Like, do I see myself using it? What have you? Over time, and those tended to be in areas that I had backgrounds in, marketplaces with eBay, payments with PayPal, developer infrastructure, dev tools, foundational building blocks for the internet with Mozilla and Firefox. So those are natural because they were things that I came from. Over time, I'd like to say that I've become comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's part of getting back to this whole technologist thing, right? Like, what do I know about the cosmetics industry or wigs or hardcore climate hardware solutions? Very little. But when I peel away many of those layers, there's technology underpinning almost all of them. And I hope that I could be helpful in those journeys in some way. And the rest of it is me learning. So I think it's actually doing some of these investments, or I know doing some of these investments is an easy way for me learning. I'd like to think it's like a mini MBA, just getting investor updates. When it comes back to myself, terrible due diligence and not a strategy anyone else should employ, but like it comes down to, do I want to hang out with that person? Do I want to have a meal with them? Do I enjoy my time with them? And you can almost certainly figure that out sometimes in seconds. Of course, the slightly additive bits are, do they have the background and like, do they care deeply about this problem space? Is this problem space important? And I'd like more recently call it age or call it a few other things. But, one of my sort of questions in my head is, will this, or the work that this founder or founders are doing, will it leave the world in a slightly better place? And so you see this trend away from the shiny things into like, the world is a better place. And it comes back to hard problems, comes back to climate, healthcare, education, financial inclusion, maybe some defense kind of pieces.
Hello, hello. I hope you're enjoying the show so far. I'm Amardeep Parmar, co-founder of BayHQ and the host of this show. For those of you who don't know, BayHQ is the community for high growth Asian heritage founders and investors in the UK. Over 7,500 people have attended our events, 200 people have been through our impact programs, and obviously there's been over 250 episodes of this podcast. If you want to join us and take part in the programs and come to the events, go to bayhq.com/join. We also just released our first ever book called Startups for Outsiders, which you can get on Amazon now, and the link is in the bio. Hope to see you soon at our event. Hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. I think I'm quite similar. My check sizes are, I think, want to say between 1 and 5K I've done so far. And part of it is that even if those companies do amazingly well, I'm not going to make that big a return. Like, unless they 100x, then materially my bottom line doesn't necessarily change. But it's a bit you said about the MBA part, I think that's really helped me. Because obviously I sit across founders all the time, talk to people all the time. But when it's my actual money on the line, you pay more attention, you understand a bit more, you get deeper into it. And I think for my own understanding, that's been really helpful. And I did the thing as well of like doing the limited partnerships to VC funds, because I look at it as that's where I can get on the inside and really understand. And obviously that's a privilege in terms of the financial background I've had and where I made money in the past. But I think that part of it to me has been like a really interesting journey. And then now I'm kind of broke, so I can't keep doing it. We're paying ourselves again now. But there's a fear of like, okay, I can't keep investing. We're not, like, we need to make our own money first. And that difficult part of it there. But with these small checks you're writing, there's so many founders and even investors that will tell you like, oh, you shouldn't take small checks or it's too complicated. But you're obviously bringing in the strategic value. How these discussions go with different founders when maybe you're the smallest check in the round?
Look, so one, I do this by design. Like I said, it's not that I couldn't afford maybe larger sums of money, but by design, I'm doing smaller sums of money because I would like to help more founders. Admittedly, I can't help every founder, but I would like to help more. Founders go through different cycles. Some founders are just looking for money, and that's okay. Probably not for me, because as a sort of investor, skin in the game person. I want to be helpful when I can be, not just because I think I could be, but like when I can be. So I'm one of those people that's looking at an investor update, and interestingly, most founders put it right at the bottom of a long email. I encourage them to put it right at the top, as in that's the first thing I'm reading, because I want to be helpful if I can be. And I like the little sometimes argument with the founder, be like, that's not really worth my time and effort in paperwork to take your 5K. And I'm like, look, well, one, you're not taking my 5K because it's going to make a difference to your round. At best, it's going to pay your head of engineering for a month. So like at that point, why are you taking the money? You really, hopefully, or probably only taking the money because of my experiences, which I have 2 decades of, and my network. Because once you have me on board, then those are available to you on tap, if it makes sense. And then I say to founders, like, you decide, you got to do what's right for you as a founder. There's absolutely no forcing function from me. But I also encourage founders, like, I'm not going to tell you how amazing or how great I am, but you probably know 2, 3, 4, 5 other founders that I've supported. Go ask them. Like, that should be, like, you should do as much due diligence on me as supposedly I'm doing on you, which I just said is very limited. But like, go ask other founders, does this person actually add any value? And then you can make a call whether that's worth the extra paperwork. Of course, there are things in the ecosystem today that make it somewhat easier, right? The sort of growing emergence of things like SPVs or special purpose vehicles, tools or communities like Odin or AngelList, etc. Just make it easier to take smaller combined aggregated checks and have a single line item on your cap table. But yeah, like, that's what I do. I do it by design, and actually, in retrospect, I wish that every single early stage check that I cut was the same amount.
What's interesting there too, I think, so I get it a lot where if somebody's capped, I'm public about who I've invested in, right? The fact that my reputation then, at the moment, is quite good, it then helps, right? So you must get this a lot where people are doing due diligence on those founders. They're then going to see, oh, okay, you've invested in them. And I'm assuming you get quite a lot of people, investors reaching out to you, being like, oh, I saw you invested in these guys. Why? Like, what did you think? And a lot of people really underestimate the power of that. And it's that soft thing of where if you put me in your deck and I will be like, yeah, that's fine. We've had it, for example, of what we're doing next year with the venture side of things. Some of the people who said, oh yeah, use my name, the power of those people, it opens up doors. And even if the money, like you said, isn't a huge amount, the fact that you're willing to put your name to them, I think people can underestimate a lot too.
Yeah, look, to your point, I say to founders, if you think it'll be helpful to you, like, feel free. Like, and yes, it's, someone sees name on some material, I definitely get a lot of inbound from those folks. In the same way that I do outbound to folks that are familiar to me in terms of names or faces on a pitch deck, because I want to know more, right? Like, I don't necessarily need to know, like, what their like the really deep down into why they made an investment. I'm more like, tell me more about this person, this team. Like, that's more my asking. And that tells you a lot, right? And sometimes, those people have been a very early investor. And the reality is, like, sometimes the things that you hear and see and feel from a founder, in retrospect, many years later, may be very different than the reality, because founders can be in founder mode. Roof's about to fall down. And sometimes I say to founder, like, people that reach out to me, it's like, yeah, look, like, this is what I think. But the reality is, like, today, it's a slightly different answer than what it may have been if you'd asked me the same question 2 years ago or 3 years ago. Now that I've been along for this journey a little bit, I've seen some updates. Of course, it's in my benefit, and selfishly, I'm still going to be biased as being as pro this opportunity as I can be, but I also am going to be honest and transparent with what I've seen and experienced.
Where do you think as well that founders don't use their investors enough, or because I think one of the big things I see a lot is that they just don't think about the customer side of things. Is that everybody's about, okay, how do we get more investors? Like, well, if you get customers, that's revenue, and that can keep you going for longer. And I feel like a lot of founders don't think about, how can this investor bring me customers? They're always concerned about, how can this investor bring me other investors? And what are the things that you see like that, where maybe founders could really make better use of strategic investors?
Well, one, founders are busy, right? There's a lot to do. There's lots of fires. And often different founders have different makeups. Some just want to be like, thank you very much. I'm going to go on and build my business now. Thanks for supporting me. Like, I'll send you updates every little while. Leave me alone. Other founders, like almost on the other extreme, like constantly sending you an email or an instant message or something like that, right? Like, so, what's the balancing act there? I don't know. But I say to founders that, like, I'm available if you think I could be helpful. And well, one, I think founders need to, if they are going to try and use their founder network, or their investor network, then they need to make some effort into better forming a relationship with the investor. And that could be a tea, a coffee every now and again, a lunch, where it's not necessarily about the business, because hopefully I'm getting that through my investor updates, but it's about life, family, people. Because then you learn more about that person. And, someone like myself will probably suddenly realize that, hold on, Dees has connections in X part of the world or in X industry. I didn't know that before because it never came up in my conversation. My conversation was only trying to extract some capital from them, right? The other part that often happens is founders do ask for help, but it's very like top level, like, and it's especially with folks that are busy, it's easy to just pass it by. So I always say to founders, definitely ask for help. Like, you don't get if you don't ask, first of all, right? But I always say, help me to help you. And what I mean by that is, like, put a little bit more effort and time and energy in the desk research when making an ask. So rather than introduce me to my next round of funders or investors or VCs, like, maybe share a spreadsheet and say, these are the funds that I've researched and I believe are relevant for me. These are the ones that I've already spoken to. These are the ones that I'm still requiring someone to help me to get to a partner or a general partner. And these are the reasons why. Like, they've made these moves historically. The more you can do of that, the easier it is for me to go, actually, I know these 3 people. Yes. Like, now I don't have to think about the 33 people that you need to talk to, because I just don't have the time to do your thinking for you. So I think it's, the ones that are better prepared and not just have like very wishy-washy asks.
I would say in the who, what, why, right? Who do you want to speak to? What exactly do you want from them? And then why do they want to speak to you? Because a lot of times, like, oh, say for example, this podcast, right? We have massive people coming on here all the time. If you just said, oh, can I speak to that Series B or Series C founders? Like, they've got a lot to do. I can't just say, oh, do you want to speak to this person who's didn't message me? You've got to give me a reason why you're going to benefit them and get that mutual introduction. And I think a lot of people just don't think about that enough, of like, just because I know somebody doesn't mean I should make the introduction, because I've also got to respect the other person's time. And just like you said, taking the time to make it a compelling argument that you're going to make the ask for them, it helps so much.
Yeah, and it may come across that, like, it needs to be almost essay-ish and like super well articulated. Like people like myself, often if I'm going to, on your benefit, on your behalf, going to someone else, like I likely have a reasonably good relationship with that person. And if I didn't, I'd probably flag it all. So I don't need a lot, but I need enough to go like, well, the receiving end is going like, Deez is asking, okay, that already has me looking. It's this, it's in my ballpark. I actually care about this. Like, yes. And sometimes people go no, and that's okay too, right? There's a double opt-in kind of process. So, and you got to figure out who in your network. Sometimes, you may have an investor list, and investor A may actually be a better way in to the same person than investor B, even in investor B knows that person. And you have to understand how this dynamic works, right?
It's the whole social intelligence piece, right? It's that you've got to understand that you can even see it me at events, right? It's like who comes in and gives me a big hug, and who's like more of a standoffish person. If you can see somebody's coming in to give me a hug, then you're at the event, you're like, oh, okay, can I chat to that person? But you've also got to frame it right. But you can tell that the dynamics between people. And if somebody's worked together with somebody for 5 years, 10 years, then yeah, they're gonna be a really good person to do the introduction because you could do it more casually. And there's some people I can just WhatsApp and be like, hey, this person wants to chat to you. This is their background. What do you think? Whereas if I need to be formal to that person or be more like, I need to work out how I'm going to frame it to them, that's going to be a harder ask.
Yeah, it's like even myself, I have this, it's not written down or anything, but I almost have this mental awareness of, who do I need to iMessage? Who do I need to email? Who do I need to Slack message? Because different people react differently to different forms of communication.
Say, for example, you came to an event last week and then you were saying about getting introduced to somebody. And I knew that, okay, I can just do it on WhatsApp because I know both of you well.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, it would just be much more of a relaxed conversation. You can just chat then. Whereas if through email, it becomes formal. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So exactly, it's like that kind of works because I know both of you well enough that, okay, this can just be a WhatsApp conversation. Whereas other people, okay, I need to do this in an email conversation because it needs to be formal, whatever it is. And I think that understanding is really important. And like, before we just wrap up and go to the quick fire questions, for those founders who are looking at the early stage of the funding, they're trying to get like those small strategic angels to believe in them, what can they do to just get people like you on board? And you said it's like the conviction and telling their story. But what is it that makes you pick them over somebody else? Or what can they do just to get themselves in a better position?
Be authentic, like be so personable. Like we're two people that will wanna, this is gonna be a long relationship, right? If all goes well, it's gonna be a very long relationship. And if my first interaction, even first few minutes of an interaction feels like it's gonna be hard work, multiply that by 6, 8, 10, 12 years, I'm already not feeling so great about it. And I haven't even heard what you're doing at this point in time. So, the authenticity, the kind of just be real. And honestly, it sounds really ridiculous, but sometimes I've made up my mind in 30 seconds. But, the thing that needs to follow is, okay, the problem space. Do you care about it? Is it a problem I care about? Like, all of these other pieces need to also fit in. But on the person front, sometimes even on a virtual call, you can make up your mind very quickly.
Yeah. And one more question then. Obviously, you interact with so many people, and this is the problem I have. My brain is like always smush, and it's you meet me 2 years ago. You just generally have a better relationship with me because I didn't have to manage so many people at that time. Whereas now when I meet people, it's my much quicker thinking, okay, how do I get into a process or a system? Because I can't do as many meetings as I once did. How do you juggle that? Because you're like obviously several years ahead and like you've met so many more people. How do you juggle so many different relationships and keeping them personal? Because my brain's too small to cope.
It's just what I do. So like making me think about it. I don't know. Partly where I grew up. Where I grew up in Durban on the east coast of South Africa. It's even in 2025. It's who you know and not what you know. So it's already in my DNA and my muscle memory. But a big part of it is, being authentic, listening, not just thinking about what you want, and playing the long game. Like, lots of people are having quick fire conversations and they're thinking about, like, how can that person be helpful for me tomorrow, next week, next month? And I'm like, I quite enjoyed spending time with that person. Like, I'll continue doing that and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. And I think I've got this conflict of what I actually enjoy is spending a lot of time with a small number of people, but then I run a community of over 10,000 people. So there's this conflict of how things happen for me now. So at a lot of the events, when I'm speaking to people, I'm thinking, okay, what's the best way I can help that person, but without it necessarily being time with me? Because I think I have so many people that I already like that I don't get to spend enough time with as well. And you have the same thing. Obviously, you have your family, you've got your friends outside of all of this too. And trying to maintain and juggle so many different relationships.
I just, the way I see it, so a lot of people who have built up networks, relationships, etc., tend to put a lot of time and effort into them, which is great, but tend to also keep them very close to themselves. And I'm almost the total opposite of that. Like, when I have good relationships, strong relationships with people, I put a lot of effort into introducing them to each other or throwing them into the proverbial melting pot together, because my general attitude is put good people together, stir it, magic will happen. And I'm comfortable with the fact that I don't need to be the center of that magic. Yeah. And once you're able to do that, then, like, the relationship will keep fueling itself without you actually fueling it, because people remember how the relationship came about.
What's funny on that is that there's so many people who I've introduced to each other that I don't remember that I did it. And then at an event, I'll be like, oh, you guys should chat. Like, you're in the same area. It's like, you introduced us 2 years ago and now we're best friends. And it's quite nice that it's just the serendipity of it now, right? Is that with the bigger events we host, you just get people in the same room. And I don't remember or track who I've done introductions to anymore. But it's quite nice to see how that's really played out, where some people have got now really, not even just beyond the business side, obviously, been investments, whatever. But some people have made really good friends from our events. And I guess that's the warm, fuzzy feeling inside sometimes. Like, it is actually helping people.
Exactly. Right. So, like, just take it and run with it, right? Keep doing it.
So going to move on to quick fire questions now. So first one, I know it's going to be tough for you. So who are 3 Asians in Britain you think are doing amazing work right now, and you want to shout them out?
Yeah, that is really tough. You've probably spoken to them all, is what my gut feeling is. But since some of this theme, I guess, was about some of my early investments, and some of your last report on investments were on Asian women getting a very, very, very small percentage of investment. I guess I'll pick 3 of those. So Insia at Shellworks. I don't know if you've spoken to her.
Nope, she's on my list to interview, so if you cook me up.
I can do that. That will be an email. I guess Nina at Blue Money. I don't know if you've spoken to her. Yeah. And probably Ahana at Clear.
For the audience who don't know who they are, could you just give them a few words?
Nina cares about financial inclusion and immigrant communities, and an age-old challenge of saving money as communities, something that I grew up with in South Africa, and we call it something, and everywhere in different parts of the world, there are different names for it. But Nina's digitizing that and doing some interesting work in the UK. Ahana's an Imperial student that's just crazily taught herself how to program in Rust, which is created within Mozilla. So I was part of that. Got into Y Combinator and started building for a problem space that she herself felt with skincare and a diary around skincare. Very lean team. I think like 2.5 people, like punching way above their weight, and has some amazing backing. And then Insia, working with Amar on hard problem space of, can you be the new Tetra Pak, right? Like when you look at a lot of the use of plastics, high percentage are in cosmetics and other bottling. And they've created some new formulas that change the packaging industry.
So Nina and Ahana have both been on, and we know them well. I think they've both been on our panels as well in the past.
Okay, there you go.
So
2 out of 3.
2 out of 3, yeah. And if you want to find out more about you and what you're up to, where should they go to? I'm
pretty available online. Most of my activity these days is probably on LinkedIn. And I have a reasonably unique name, so you shouldn't find too many of me, I think.
And is there anything that you need help with right now that the audience could help you with?
I'm not thinking about any help right now. It's like I'm thinking about shutting down for the year.
This episode will come out next year anyway.
This episode's in 2026. Okay. No, I always say to people, like, reach out, like let's catch up if time and space allows. And the needs will come out of that. Right now, no specific needs.
So thanks so much for coming on. Any final words?
No. Thank you for making time and space for me in your new kind of digs. It's been fun to do this finally. I think we've been talking about it for maybe, 9 months, 10 months, I don't know. So it's great having this very casual chat.
Thank you. It's the first one with a bookcase, and people watching this on YouTube will notice I've only just started putting up the soundproofing bars at the top there. So it's just 2 random tiles at the top.
Yeah, I see a whole box of acoustic panels on the other side of me. So next time.
So again, thanks so much for coming on, and end of the episode.